Hello, and welcome to Retention Chronicles, the customer retention podcast for e-commerce marketers. I am your host and fellow e-com marketer, Mariah Parsons. Tune in as I speak with D2C founders and operators about strategy that works and strategy that doesn't. Of course, we are able to have these conversations because of our podcast sponsor, Malomo.
Hi, I'm Alicia, the founder of Midstoppers. We're a fast-growing baseball brand with a very small team, and Malomo has been a lifesaver. My customers love the detailed shipping updates, and so do I. My Wizmo tickets are way down, and the problem orders triggers is especially helpful when a shipping delay occurs. And I want them to know we know what's happening and that we're on top of it. I don't recommend software lightly, and I've kept a very minimal tech stack. But if you want your shipping notifications to reduce support tickets and drive repeat purchases like mine do, you'll definitely want to check out Malomo. You can learn more at gomalomo.com. That's GOMALOMO.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Retention Chronicles. I'm so excited for our episode here today. Kate, thank you so much for joining me. It is going to be a great time. A little bit of listenership or a little bit of background for our listeners is Kate and I met at Expo West this year. It was the first time I went, and Kate is just such a fun, bubbly person, and we've already bonded so much, so I can't wait to have her on the show. Kate, please say hello and tell the audience who you are.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Kasch. I'm very excited to be here, Mariah. I guess I should kick off by saying I'm Kate, and currently I am listening to Taylor Swift's Red because my girls are very much into that album right now. Super happy to be here, though, and to chat with you today.
I love it. I love it. We talked about this last time. We chatted of like, what era are you in? And I think I'm still in, I think I was Midnights when we last spoke, but I think I'm getting actually into folklore a little bit.
Oh, love that.
Recently. I don't know if it's just because it's been like a little bit of a rainier week here in Chicago.
Changing of the seasons, I think.
Exactly. Yes. But summer like should be here so soon. So I'll be, in the I don't know what, this is a fun question. What would you say, like, what album screams summer?
Lover. I think Lover. I think the visualizations of a lot of like what she was like going through in New York City. The windows are down in the cab as she's drunkenly crying on the way home from the bar.
We love it. Summer. Okay, perfect. I love that answer. Okay, so yes. Thank you for giving the background. I think our listeners, as you know, are also in the D2C, retail, just CPG industry in general, which you're kind of kicking off I'm going to call it loosely, like the conference connections that I've made, which has been a lot in the CPG world. So our listeners are going to get a lot more, I guess, focused episodes around food and consumable products, which I think will be really fun, especially a lot of brands that people are familiar with and they see in stores, they see online. So yeah, you just joined the Muddy Bites team. Give us a little bit of background of like, who you guys are in case people aren't familiar with your brand, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, well, I'll actually start by telling you just a little bit about my career. So you talk about the food space, and I'll make the really bad joke that I've been in the food space for 20 years. So I started when I was 12.
I love it.
Once an introduction. But I've been working in food for 20 years. I started first job out of college, and I've been incredibly fortunate to work for 3 food-based companies. So I started with Wrigley ahead of the Mars Inc. acquisition and selling very much household brands, gum brands, Orbit gum, Extra gum, and of course, Juicy Fruit, Big Red, and sort of the original gum brands. And I ended up working for ultimately Mars Inc., who acquired Wrigley in 2008. I ended up working for Mars Inc. for 17 years and really got an incredible sort of foundational knowledge and working expertise of consumer food products. I worked in various levels of the logistics side, sales and analytics, and of course, even on the marketing side and the brand side on brands like M's and Combos. And in 2020, I was, like all of us, in the middle of a sort of existential midlife crisis. I had just given birth to twins. I all of a sudden had 3 kids under 3 in my very crowded house that we weren't allowed to leave. And I had been close enough in my career to sort of touch these small challenger brands like Kind, but never like close enough to live in it. And so people like Daniel Lubitsky, who's the founder of Kind, I mean, they were rock star heroes to me. Like what would it feel like to take something from nothing and create a $1 billion brand or more, sure, or take something from nothing and create something that becomes a part of everybody's daily life. And I think that's one of the really cool things about food and food brands is if you think about how we consume products. I mean, we're such creatures of habit. I just, reached down for you a few minutes before we started and showed you my emotional snacking meat sticks from Archer, right? Like that is a brand that is a part of my daily consumption, and it's a pick me up. So it's an emotional release. It's a moment where I'm happy to have that like salty taste of my beef stick, my high protein beef stick in the middle of the day. So like the way food brands come into our lives is just at like such a deep level. They nourish us body, they nourish us in soul. We give them to our families. Anyway, all that to say, because of that love of food brands, and because I was so impressed with the ability of some of these founders to scale from nothing to something incredible, I took a crazy leap and I left Mars Inc. after 17 years and joined, I won't call it a startup, but it was a small scaling, emerging brand in the frozen novelty space called Good Pop. And Good Pop is the brainchild of just an absolute genius, well-intentioned visionary, Daniel Getz. He really wants to change the way that consumers see food and see treats as nourishing. He has a real view to like sustainability and reducing unnecessary sugars and this idea that real food tastes great, and spent 4 incredible years growing that brand and growing really with that brand to learn the ins and outs of what it really means to scale a brand in a conglomerate billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar brand space, and how competitive it is, and how it really takes a connectivity to your consumers to drive brand love far and away above the sort of established big guys in order to win in that space. And then, as you mentioned, so I did that for 4 years. It's certainly become part of my DNA and my journey. And then recently joined another brand that's really trying to scale with fun food. So our purpose at Muddy Bites is entirely bringing fun and joy back to snacking and to cookies. I think we believe real food, fair trade, that is table stakes in food today. It's about how do we bring something that consumers aren't otherwise yet enjoying today to share a moment, a connection with families, friends, etc. It's really a 3D cookie, if I'm going to describe it now. It was the brainchild of 2 founders out of Lamar's, Iowa, who realized that the best part of an ice cream cone is that very last bite. It is waffly and chocolatey, and maybe it's strawberry and it's melty, and it's the very best part of a great 20-minute treat. So how do you make that into a cookie? So they created a shelf-stable cookie, and now it's my job to bring it to the masses.
Yeah, that was such a comprehensive review. That was great. I feel like whenever I talk about myself, I'm like, what have I even done? I don't even know.
Note, I didn't say anything I did. I just got to talk about things I love. I love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Yes, exactly. You can see you really live the life and the vision, which is why I wanted you on the show. So that's perfect. And yeah, so I remember trying Mighty Bites at Expo West, and I was like, oh my God, those are so good. Like I am such a chocolate person. Like it is my favorite thing in the world. And so I feel like I've tried a lot of different snacks, and just seeing it, yeah, it literally is like probably, if you're not watching this, viewers, like a 1 inch, I don't know if that's actually correct, but like 1 inch just bottom of the ice cream cone.
Yep.
Yeah, 1.5. Yeah, ½ inch. I don't know. What even is a measurement these days? Who knows?
Is that metric?
Yeah, metric system. I don't know. And then it's like filled with like frosting, question mark? I don't know, a filling.
Chocolate. So filled with chocolate.
Okay, it is chocolate.
We've just launched peanut butter and chocolate. So that is exactly what it sounds like. So peanut butter and chocolate is in a chocolate cone filled with a delicious peanut butter filling. It's so good. And we have a cookies and cream, which is white chocolate with a chocolate cone, which is also amazing. We have double fudge, which is a milk chocolate filling with a milk chocolate cone. Amazing.
I had that one because I'm like double chocolate all the way, always.
Awesome. Well, I'll be excited in a few more months to share our 2026 innovation, because we're really going to take this, where no one has gone before, but even one step further. So
Ooh, that's a good teaser for our audience. Okay, I love that. You're already in like in the mode of, getting everyone intrigued and telling about the product. Okay, so I love that. Thank you for sharing about your background, telling us more about the brand. This is always something that I love to draw parallels. It's the podcaster in me. So going from like a big retail name, obviously, and even like seeing through an acquisition, and then going to the scaling startup world. Let's start with just one thing that like you didn't expect about going from, you know, a brand that gets acquired by a big player in the space and then going to a smaller brand that is like carving away a new niche in the industry.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that's surprising, and anyone who's done it knows that the biggest difference between a major global brand and company and a small emerging brand is really resourcing, right? So at a big company, there's someone to do every item on the list. And at a small company, there just isn't. And so because of that, you get exposure really across the business ecosystem in ways that you simply cannot imagine at any level at a massive global business. But I think that the thing that was most surprising to me was that the translation between consumer interest and getting on a retailer shelf is not, it's not as clean as you would expect it to be. The work that must be done to both convince, to almost prove out ahead of placement on shelf, to show support in the form of marketing, in the form of pent demand, in the form of dollars, certainly. It not only takes a really long time, but takes a lot of effort, energy, and resilience to get that done. When I worked on brands like M&M's, in 2017, we launched M&M's Caramel, which was a huge launch in the confectionery category. But at no point was it really a question of what retailers are going to be willing to take this item, or going to give us the floor space on this item, the shelf space on this item. All of our models were based on really 80% ACV in 8 weeks. And in fact, we over-delivered that. At a small emerging brand, you are counting in doors and shelves and debating greater than 50% certainty we get one small retailer, and you're doing that for every single opportunity. I think that surprised me, how truly, truly difficult it is to get a brand that has proven that consumers love it to the shelves of retailers at scale. That continues to be much more difficult than I would imagine. And the way I would actually tie that to Muddy Bites. So Muddy Bites launched, we talk sometimes about how we launched on TikTok. Muddy Bites actually launched on Kickstarter. And when they put the two founders put the product on Kickstarter and said, hey, who's interested in the bottom of an ice cream cone as a cookie? And the demand was crazy. They got support from all over the world, people saying, yes, I want this product. Yes, I want this product. And that was able to support them in building a facility that enabled them to start creating first by hand and then with a manufacturing line. But that didn't turn in, that story alone, proven the consumers were saying, hey, we love this product. We want this product. That didn't turn into retailer distribution. And in fact, that was 2018-19. And I'm sitting here talking to you halfway through 2025, and we're still really less than 20% ACV in natural grocery. So even 5 years later, just have such, a Herculean task of getting the product on shelf. And so that continues to surprise me how difficult that is.
Yeah. And I think our audience, like typically a lot of brands start either in the e-com world and then make it to retail, or they start the other way where they start in retail and then try and go to e-com. And it's this constant battle of what is right for your brand and like trying not to cannibalize one group of consumers because your strategy is totally different, right? Like most of our audience will know that a lot of the brands I speak with on this podcast have one of the two. Well, they definitely have an e-commerce channel, but they either are solely e-commerce or they have e-commerce and retail or some other branch like wholesale, distributor, whatever their strategy is. And it always is so interesting to hear how people are making that decision of like where they are investing their resources, especially as a smaller team. Because like you said, Kickstarter, you can get massive amounts of support for something online. And then obviously how Kickstarter works, right? Like you get that funding upfront, so then it helps you whatever you want to put those resources, that cash towards. But it still then doesn't even solve the getting those customers to shop again, right? Like it solves acquisition for e-commerce, but like you were saying, it doesn't solve retail distribution. It also doesn't solve retention. And so I think about it in the way of like proving that something is, one, you have a place in the market. Great thing to do. But you're totally right in that when you're looking at where do you start and then how do you translate that into a way that these buyers in the retail world want to see. And I saw actually at the Sweets and Snacks Expo, I always have to think about that name because I want to say salty and sweet or sweet and salty, but no, it's Sweet and Snacks.
We really differentiate between, I'm like, all my snacks are sweet.
Yeah, I know. So funny. But I guess, yeah, just Sweet and Snacks Expo in Indianapolis. And I saw one brand. It was like Behave. Have you heard of them? They're like the high fiber, low sugar gummies.
Oh, sure.
And they had like on their, it was like a podium with an iPad. And on the podium, like wrapped around, it was like as seen on I forget the copy, but it was like as seen on TikTok or viral on TikTok or whatever. The iPad was just playing their TikToks on repeat. And they were saying, like, at the booth when I was chatting with them, they were like, buyers are interested in this right now, like retail buyers. And I was like, that's so interesting to think about retailers wanting to see the social media presence before or after. I don't know what stage or conversations they're in, but like wanting to see that presence, even though the social media isn't for like quote unquote traditional retail. It's like, can you generate that audience to motivate them to go to those stores before you're even in retail?
Yeah. And I think that's that is a very true concept. I mean, back dating myself here, but we used to talk, it was always exciting if we could bring TV copy to a buyer ahead of it airing on national TV, and really gotten away from sort of any interest in that. It is now, how can you tease for me what social activation you're going to do? And really this idea of like virality or going viral as a strategy is now sort of within like a lot of the marketing decks I've seen. And it's like, it's funny because people will be like, well, and then we'll go viral with this. And you're like, well, that's not how that works, but I love the effort. And our buyers do want to see that, because the reality for a lot of emerging brands is, it's always been true for my brands, emerging or not, we're not normally on the shopping list. Even for those who are super organized, type A, and have a great shopping list, there's so much value in that impulse purchase that they stop and they buy off a display or an end cap or even just off the shelf. What those like social ads do is, even if they're not going to remind us to put it on a shopping list, they are creating brand love before you even tried it, so that when you do see it in store, it translates to a conversion. And I think social has a really interesting ability to do that more than TV ever could because of our algorithms. So if you, obviously being a targeted consumer, you're going to get that message, but then you're going to get that message like 60 times in the like hour you spend on Instagram today. And so, you know, I don't know, it's interesting. We can really reach our target demographic. We can pound them over the head with it. That hopefully turns into a conversion at retail. But retail products thrive and succeed off of being wide reach, whereas maybe some of our socials are very narrow reach. So hence the virality thing being part of everybody's marketing strategy. But it's funny you say that. I actually am preparing 2 different decks for 2 different customer meetings this week, and they both include different versions of TikToks and Instagram reels that we have had go viral over the last several months. Very, very real indeed.
Yes, and hopefully reassuring, right? Of like, okay, that is important, right?
No, I mean, it definitely is important, because there's no doubt that I think stuff you see comfortably from your like bed when you're like doom scrolling at like 2 a.m. does,
as we all do.
Right. But that's really about acquisition. You know, I think it's interesting to see like you can acquire new customers that way. Do you keep them that way? Does the thing that caught their attention the first time on social, whether it was like a tongue-in-cheek like self-care morning routine by dipping your face in a bowl of Muddy Bites, which we did do and it got a lot of traction, but is that repeatable, or do you always need a new message to reach yet a new audience, or do you need a different message to retain? So I don't know the answer to that, but these are, you know,
those are the questions that we all ask ourselves. I was gonna, if you hadn't said that, I was gonna be like, well, what do you think about that? How do you think about retention? Because you're completely right in that we're talking about acquisition in consumers online, but also buyers, right? Like, I think that's something that even if D2C brands that listen to this aren't in the retail space right now, or even just brands in general, they're like always thinking about, I think, the next, 5 years, the next 10 years, wherever it would be the right time, of like the acquisition of a buyer, or like actually being able to, acquire their business. And then that's a whole other different sector of how do you actually market in retail and all that stuff.
Well, you make me think of something, which I think for a D2C brand, it is probably a longer journey from discovery of the item to like put in the cart and then even to go all the way through the purchase cycle. Because even if I think of myself, I like see a brand, maybe I scroll the website, I like this brand of jeans or whatever, maybe I even put it in my cart, and then whether it's price or something else, my kids running around, that distracts me from completing the purchase, you know, it might take me 6 months to finally place my first purchase against that brand. At retail, that 6-month or 9-month cycle is targeted at the gatekeeper to the consumer. And so that is where the effort goes in to acquire the ability to get the consumer. Because once the consumer's in the store, really they're going to make the purchase decision in less than 8 seconds. So it's sort of like this, I guess the to your point, the focus on who are you trying to attract is different if you're D2C, which is directly to the consumer, as in the name, or if you're going through retail, you really have to win over the buyer first to prove to them that the consumers will be there. Because once you're on the shelf at Whole Foods or Walmart, the odds are you're gonna convert somebody that day, right?
Yeah.
Whereas in D2C online, it's really going to be, how do I attract Kate to finally buy this pair of jeans that are slightly cropped and baggy and make me let go of my skinny jeans. That took a long time.
The ever constant battle.
They really are flattering. I don't know.
Yeah. You got to do what works for you, right?
I know. I'm also wearing crew socks now. I don't know. What am I doing here?
We're just all out here trying to do our best.
That's right.
Chasing twins and little ones.
That's true.
All around. No, you make a really good point though and I haven't thought about it that way, of like who's the gatekeeper of acquisition in different channels, of like a retailer is going to, their main commodity is that they have access and already have customers coming to their stores. So like that's what they can gatekeep, versus your own, say like website, is how much traffic can you generate, and the gatekeeping is like figuring out your own strategy and like figuring out what works. And so it's just, yeah, it's so fascinating. That's why we have this podcast, to just try and make our way through all of it. So I love asking this question, especially on the acquisition side, and then we'll tip into retention pretty quickly. But what's like one campaign is there any campaign that comes like to top of mind of like, you're like, oh damn, that was a really good, like they got me with that one, or anything that you can share like as a consumer or as an operator in the space?
Yeah. Great question. I think the best campaign that I can think of in recent memory was actually a campaign that Good Pop ran actually just earlier this year. And Christy Clea, who's the VP of marketing at Good Pop, you know, I think she's brilliant, but she really gets the role that the brand plays in a core Good Pop demographic mind and heart. So the program was called like the Good Pop Hotline, and it was on only owned social. So put out on, I think, just Facebook and Instagram, a post that had a number to call and like a picture of a dropped popsicle. And the concept behind it was, if you're in the middle of a tantrum at home and your 3-year-old is screaming at you, call this number and we're going to send you an emergency box of popsicles and of Good Pop. And we worked with Instacart to make sure they could deliver, etc. We ran that as a test campaign for 3 days, and our quote unquote, our servers were overloaded. You know, we had real Good Pop employees at the other end of the phone to take the stories and the phone numbers and get the addresses and provide the popsicles. So overwhelmed. People were leaving voicemails, and the voicemail box got full because the campaign hit on it knew its audience. It knew a real problem that they had to solve every single day of their lives. It provided a solution that the person with the problem could feel good about. It's no sugar added fruit pop for their kids, 25 calories, less than 6 grams of sugar. I feel like I can give this to my kid all day long. It solved the problem for the end consumer, because the 3-year-old, the 6-year-old is having the tantrum, is now going to get a popsicle out of this. And it solved a problem for the brand in that it highlighted really the simple joys of being a fruit pop brand, who spent a lot of time talking about nutrition and education, could for just 1 second pivot to talking about the simple pleasure of why the brand exists and is so important to so many consumers. So I think that's my favorite campaign. It was absolutely phenomenal to listen to real people's voicemails, to read real people's emails. And I have to say, I think my favorite were there wasn't just one of them. It was like several millennials who would write an email and would say, I know I'm supposed to call, but I'm a millennial and I don't know how to pick up the phone. Please send me popsicles to this address.
Love.
So that was a really, really brilliant campaign. And then, though this has nothing to do with social or anything that we're talking about here, I think a campaign that will live rent-free in my mind forever is like the biggest guys in advertising, right? Disney World, like 10 years ago, had an ad before I was a mom, before I was even thinking about becoming a mom, where the parents were surprising the kids with Disney tickets. Or no, they were taking them to Disney the next day. And the little boy, who must have been like 3 years old, couldn't sleep. And they were like, buddy, you got to go to bed. And he just said in his cute little 3-year-old, 2-year-old voice, I'm too excited to sleep. Anyway, that is not a social campaign. It was run on old-fashioned TV, but it lives rent-free in my mind.
We take it. There's something in there that someone can translate into a social campaign, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Emotions, like, right? So, okay. I love those examples. And that is such a good idea with the popsicle hotline, like Good Pop hotline. I love that. I'm just like, I now want to access to like all those voicemails and emails because that is hilarious.
You know what? There are still some live posts on their Instagram. You can scroll the comments, and like a lot of them will be like, we couldn't reach you guys. The voicemail was full. But some of them, you know, I can't call. And I think they actually have some of their posts were posting like real voicemails that are just like, yes, of course, life is hard, and you need a popsicle right now, and you deserve it.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, hard transition into retention now, because this is what we love. This is, you know, where my heart really is. Like, I think it's so fun. Acquisition is like interesting to me, but like retention, I'm like, oh, that's like the sweet spot. Okay, so walk us through, because obviously we talk about acquisition a lot, but like, how do you even start to view retention? And we can think about it in like D2C and also retail, because like we said, there are different strategies. And so I think both would kind of be interesting here. So yeah, give me your thoughts.
Yeah. Retention is, I think, way more difficult than acquisition for a lot of reasons. In spite of our best efforts to emotionally appeal, a la Disney, a la Good Pop, to the consumer, there's a lot of brands that can occupy that same space, especially when it comes to fast-moving consumer brands, right? There's always an upstart coming in and promising to do the same thing and better. Retention, I think, on a D2C brand is probably very tactical and probably will remain so, right? It's the appropriately timed reminder, whether that's the email follow-up, whether that's what you guys do, right? Where you can close a transaction and then be redirected to actually buy more. Certainly. It's the ask for the review. It's the follow-up of the 10% discount this time. But as I work on a brand that is started D2C and is now in retail, I really think about how I can get those folks that either love us on TikTok or bought us on muddybites.com or Amazon, how they can maybe continue to buy us there or send us to their Uncle Stan in Saskatchewan or whatever. But then how that will translate actually to purchases in store. Because that's the journey that we want to make to truly scale as a brand. And so for me, that is the same tactics, right? It's going to be reminding our consumers who bought us online that we're now available in more places. It might be to follow up with whether it's like a coupon that can be redeemed digitally or in store in some cases. It's really making sure we have that captive audience and we're telling them where they can now find us. We just launched globally, which means, you know, all stores in the US, at Whole Foods, and we are leveraging our existing consumer email base to tell them, to ask them for help. Please go buy us at Whole Foods while we're launching there. Because then the retention becomes both easier and harder. Easier because if they go to the same store at the same time every week and they walk the same path, the hope is they'll walk by your product every day on shelf. So retention in store is promoting with tags. We know consumers' eyes are attracted to the yellow tag or the red tag that reduces the price and offers value. It's being in stock, which is way more important than you realize. If you're not on shelf, they simply can't buy you. It's just a lost sale, right? And so you go from online where, okay, your order might ship out 3 days later because it was coming from the production facility. But if you're not in UNFI and you're not shelf at Whole Foods, you know, you've lost that consumer for that week or maybe that month if Whole Foods is a once a month trip. And you know, for me, in my role, it's about ensuring, we talked about retailers as gatekeepers. It's ensuring that gatekeeper, that retailer, understands the ways that I am trying to reach the brand so that they can actually become the most effective, best partner in helping me reach that consumer. And it's things like building relationships, finding the mutuality in our two strategies. If Whole Foods is looking to surprise and delight their consumers, how can I continue to bring innovation that will help Whole Foods achieve that goal while helping me achieve my goal of scaling? So I think D2C retention is about speaking just as frequently as you can to your consumer, to tell them why they love you, to remind them why they love you, to offer them value, to have a reason to be in their inbox, to be on their social page, to be an organic post that, you know, they somehow double click on it. And retaining consumers at retail is just as much about retaining the retailer and that partnership as it is the shopper.
Yeah, I love that breakdown. And I love too, like, I'm pulling just one thing out of the many great things that you said of like asking people for help too, like across channels. And this is something I feel as a consumer where it's like, if I see a brand that I like, or like I know someone who works there or something, whatever reason that I'm affiliated with this brand, and they're like, please go help. Like, I'm like, okay, say less. Like,
Absolutely.
and that is something that I feel like a lot of emerging brands understand, but this is where I think the difference of a like logo brand or a big name brand forgets about this piece and can't make that connection with their consumers because they're just like at that point, which you've had experience in that industry. So I don't know if you'd say the same thing, but that like ability to connect with consumers and be like, hey, we are doing this, but like, let us drop the curtain a little bit of like, give you the behind the scenes. Like, for us to continue to be in retail or like continue to be at your local shop, we have to prove that there's value there. So maybe instead of shopping online or instead of shopping here, like, could you, give the extra effort to shop here for the next whatever amount of time? And this is why I think social is so, this is why I think social does what it does for brands that are on there and that are giving the behind the scenes content, because it is showing people like, oh yeah, the explanation behind why you do something and why you choose between different things. And I think that is why like customer retention, I think about it so heavily of like educating your customers and keeping them in the loop, even outside of product launches, like really keeping them in the loop of what is going on with your brand. And I'm just seeing it more and more. So I love that you said that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the word authenticity is definitely overused, but it's overused for a reason. And whether it's in our food system or whether it's a clothing line and wanting to know who's really making the product, I mean, I think, American consumers today do want to know where this comes from and what that looks like. And so when you talk about the asking for help, certainly small brands know how to do it. I think this is why people love founder stories, because we're not rooting for a brand. We are rooting for our friend or for someone that we admire. And I would say, you say big companies, they don't do that. I agree with you. And yet they do leverage it. If you look at, I'll go back to Disney. Walt Disney was a guy. And if you go to Disney World or you're on any platform for Disney, they're going to remind you of that was actually a family business before it was what it is. The Mars family, it is a family business. And, the founders of that company, you're going to find pictures of actually, ironically, at Disney World at the flagship store. There's a go down Main Street USA. I know too much about Disney World. Go down Main Street USA. Right down on the right, there's a candy shop. That is the Mars Candy Shop. It's actually got pictures of Frank Mars and with Walt Disney from 100 years ago, right? Like,
wow.
So I do think that there's a sense of authenticity. Like it's not our generation that's discovered it. It's actually, generations and generations old. If you walk into a Publix, there's a museum of the Publix history. H-E-B, same thing. A family-owned business. Their offices, the Butts offices are right there. You have a feeling of history, a feeling that you're walking into a family company. And I do think that they leverage that with their shoppers really, 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 really well. When you shop in H-E-B, you do feel you are supporting a local Texan family. And as, a Texas resident, that does matter to me. So I would say that it's less obvious probably that the big guys are doing it. But if you look for it, they're doing it too, because it does create a sense of authenticity that is frankly real. It's just that they've scaled beyond anyone's wildest dreams. But small brands doing it, I think there's a certain another level to say, like, you're helping your friends in the industry, your friends from down the street, earn a living, or, you can inform what the next flavor should be. Or it's almost like, this is a total left-hand turn, but talking about like Crocs or the Stanley water bottles and the ability to customize has made those brands so successful. To some degree in small consumer goods, it might be like Sarah from across the street's suggestion that we launch an orange-flavored Muddy Bite. But if we do it, how much ownership does she get to feel in the brand too? So anyway, that's a total tangent.
No, I love that. And that's a really good retort of like, because you're completely right. There are like roots of the big logo brands and their history and their family run businesses and all that stuff. And yeah, that's a really good point, because I haven't thought about, like, I guess how they approach establishing that emotional connection in different ways than, you know, brands that are launching today or 5 years ago or whatever time frame. So yeah, I love that. I love it so much.
That's a tangent. That's definitely a tangent. You and I can go off and do the tangent chronicles.
Yes, exactly. I have a feeling that would be so easy for us, because we're already at time.
Yeah.
And and if there's one thing I know from our interactions, is that we could just chit chat all day long. But
Chronicles next week. Yeah.
yes, okay, amazing. We'll just add it on to both of our plates that are already full enough, but we're gonna do it. Thank you, Kate. This has been amazing just to chat like strategy with you, hear just how you approach different things and how you think about D2C, retail, acquisition, retention, all of the good things that, you know, this specific business podcast loves to chat about. So thank you for making the time. It's really, really important and really fun to have you here.
Such a pleasure. Love what you're doing. It's so great to have like fresh minds around this stuff, to chat with people. I'm really enjoying your podcast. I'm so honored to be a guest, and I look forward to chatting with you again.
Oh, thank you. You too. Thank you for listening to today's episode. These conversations bring so much knowledge to the table, and I'm so grateful for that. If you haven't already, please subscribe, follow us on social media, and tell us who our next guest should be on our website. Let's give another shout out to our day one sponsor, Malomo. As you know, Malomo is an order tracking platform that enables Shopify brands to take control of their transactional email and SMS through branded order tracking pages. That means you can ditch those boring all white carrier pages. You know, the ones I'm talking about. Everyone has seen an ugly tracking page in their life, and you can swap it with a page that matches your brand. Customers like you and I obsessively check order tracking an average of 4.6 times per order. That's why leading Shopify brands are turning that engagement into customer loyalty and revenue through branded order tracking. Learn more about how to get ahead of shipping issues, brand your order tracking experience, and reconvert customers while they wait for their package to arrive with Malomo. Visit gomalomo.com. That's GOMALOMO.com.